Welcome to tonight's story session. Shadow people, those fleeting silhouettes darker than the dark, live where your eyes don't look long enough. Some say they belong to sleep paralysis, to nerves and stress, to headlights gliding across a wall. Others swear that once you notice them, they notice you back. What follows are true accounts from people who say they didn't just see a shadow, they were seen by it. If you've ever felt watched in your own room, if you've ever caught yourself staring at a corner until it starts to stare back, this first story may change the way you sleep tonight. Story 1. The Bedroom Watcher. I was 21 the first time I lived alone. The apartment wasn't much. One bedroom, scuffed wood floors, a single thin window that faced an alley and a brick wall. It had that old building smell you can't hide with candles, like dust and dry plaster, like something old breathing. You could hear everything: pipes knocking, the elevator grinding, the neighbor's TV, the stairwell door slamming at weird hours. Cheap, imperfect, but mine. Independence made even the noise feel like a badge of honor. The first few nights felt normal. I came home from late classes, microwaved something regretful at midnight, put on headphones and tried to make a dent in readings until my eyes burned. I told myself I'd fix my sleep schedule once the semester steadied, the same lie every student tells. I slept hard. I woke up to the city already moving. It changed around the end of the first week. I can't point to a moment. It was more like a temperature dropping slowly until you finally notice you're shaking. I'd be at my desk with the lamp on and catch myself pausing mid-sentence, turning my head because I really felt, like someone was standing behind me. Not a noise, a pressure, a hollow in the air like a mouth about to speak. I'd swivel around to nothing, tell myself to drink water, and keep typing. Then I started noticing how the corners of the room looked wrong after midnight. The shadows weren't soft. They swallowed light. The far corner by the closet seemed deeper than it should have been, like a hole cut out of the night. I told myself it was the way the lamplight fell. I told myself it was stress. But the feeling returned the next night, and the next. I'd lay in bed scrolling through nothing until 2 a.m., and that's when I'd see it. Not a person, not a face. Just a vertical darkness shaped exactly like someone standing still. The moment I looked straight at it, it would dissolve. I laughed at myself after the first time. After the fifth, there was no punchline. The first real incident happened at 3 in the morning because of course it did. I woke to the sound of something faint and plastic hitting the floor. I stared at the alarm clock blinking from the middle of the room, the cord pulled out of the wall as if someone had yanked it. I didn't move for a minute. The apartment was silent. The building breathed around me. I got up, plugged it back in, told myself I'd knocked the cord earlier. I lay down and didn't sleep until the blue light from the window turned gray. The next day I was late to class. The day after, my phone crashed twice in the apartment but worked fine outside. The kitchen light flickered exactly when I stood under it and never when I wasn't. Building wiring, I thought. Old buildings act like that. I repeated it like a spell. That weekend, I slept without music, too tired to bother. Sometime in the middle of the night, I woke up with my eyes already open, as if something had pulled me up out of sleep. The room was the kind of black you only get in an interior space with one bad window. I tried to sit up and couldn't. My chest felt pinned. My arms were thick and useless. My tongue felt like it belonged to someone else. I'd heard of sleep paralysis. I'd even watched videos about it, but they don't tell you about the sound. It wasn't footsteps. It wasn't the elevator. It was breathing. Not mine. Slow and patient from the far corner, like whoever was there had all the time in the world. I stared so hard into the dark that my head hurt, and I saw it. Saw it the way you see a door you've walked through 100 times, standing in the corner by the closet. Tall. Thinner than a human should be, like a shadow stretched out by a late afternoon sun. No features, but I felt its attention like heat against my skin. It tilted its head the way dogs do, curious, except the motion was wrong, too smooth, too slow. I tried to scream. My throat clicked. When it moved, it didn't walk. The dark seemed to come forward in one piece, closing the space between us without crossing it. I could taste metal. The closer it came, the colder the room felt. It leaned over me, and the only way I can explain it is this. Imagine staring into a mask cut from the night itself, so black it makes the rest of the dark look grey. No eyes, and yet I knew it was looking back. Something brushed the inside of my ear, a whisper so low it was just vibration, a shape of sound without words. I understood nothing and everything. Mine, it said, without saying it. Whatever held me broke all at once. My body jerked up like I'd been yanked by a string. The room was empty. My heart made my vision pulse. I turned on the lamp with a shaking hand and wrapped the blanket around my shoulders like that could stop whatever the dark was holding. Dawn took a year to arrive. I did what people do when they're frightened in a rational age. I made a list, checked the wiring, moved the bed, buy blackout curtains, don't sleep on your back, play white noise. I added a joke at the end, stop being dramatic, to prove I was fine. For a few nights, the list helped. No paralysis, no breathing. My grades steadied. I started falling asleep before 2. Then I dreamed I was in the apartment, awake in my bed, while something heavy sat on the mattress near my feet. I looked down, but the dark bent the shape out of itself, and when I blinked, the imprint on the blanket was still there. I woke with the impression of cold across my ankles. I invited friends over the next evening without telling them why. We ordered pizza and pretended we weren't all broke. I told a creepy story about the building's elevator getting stuck. At one point, during some movie with the volume too low, Mark was halfway through a joke when he stopped talking, his eyes sliding toward the hallway. "Who's in your room?" he asked. The way he said it turned everyone quiet. "What?" "Dude," he said, half a laugh that didn't sound like one. "There's someone standing in your doorway." We all turned. The hallway held its breath. The doorway was a rectangle of darker dark. I stood up like I'd been pulled by a wire. I flicked on the hall light and walked slowly to the bedroom, expecting, hoping, to find the closet door half open, a coat hanging just so, the obvious thing every story ignores. The room was ordinary in the way crime scenes look in daylight. I turned back to the living room, and Mark had gone pale. "I swear," he said. "Tall guy. Right there. Like, right there." We talked about it because we had to. Maybe a reflection, maybe the light from the TV, maybe the old hallway mirror at the end had caught one of us and stretched it. Everyone agreed. Nobody believed. After they left, I turned on every light and stood in the kitchen until the bulbs hummed. I slept with the lamp on. It didn't help. The next weeks blur now when I try to put them in order. I know I started waking at exactly 3 a.m. more nights than made sense. I know the pressure on my chest returned, sometimes brief and sometimes like a hand pressing slowly until I thought something in my rib cage would crack. I know I'd hear a soft scuff near the closet, like cloth dragging on wood, and once the closet door gave a tiny shiver, I felt rather than saw. I started keeping a glass of water by the bed and woke some mornings to find the glass near the edge of the nightstand, an inch from falling like something had tested its balance. I started losing things. A pen I'd just used, my keys I always left on the hook, a single sock. They turned up where I'd already looked. Twice I found the alarm clock unplugged, the cord coiled neatly on the floor as if whoever had done it had all the patience in the world. The second full paralysis episode was worse because I knew it was coming. It pinned me deeper. My own breath sounded wrong in my head. And then there was a new sound, the faintest clicking, like fingernails against wood, moving up the side of the bed. The mattress dipped next to my hip, the way it does when somebody sits down carefully. Cold flooded across my stomach like I'd opened a window into winter. When I could move again, I rolled off the bed so fast I bruised my shoulder on the floor. I slept the rest of the night against the far wall with the lamp on and my back to cold plaster, as if that could stop a thing made of dark. By then, I'd become the person who searches forums at 2 a.m. Shadow people, sleep paralysis demons, old hag syndrome. Some posts were jokes. Some read like medical brochures. A few were too specific. A tall figure, a sense of ownership, a wrong tilting head. "Don't acknowledge it," one person wrote. Another said, "Tell it to leave out loud." Someone else said it feeds on fear, so don't be afraid. As if that were an option a person could select from a menu. I tried salt across the doorway because a thread said to. I tried a prayer because I remembered the words, even if I didn't know if I believed in the person I was talking to. I burned a cheap stick of sage on my kitchen stove and almost set off the alarm. The smell soaked into the curtains and didn't help at all. The worst night started out like the best. I fell asleep early. I don't know what time it was when I woke, only that the digital clock was dead and the room felt underwater. I couldn't move, not even my fingers. The dark in the closet corner was there in a way that didn't need eyes. It stepped forward. I couldn't see legs, but the room lost a little light with each not step it took. When it reached the end of the bed, it leaned, and I felt pressure on my shins and then my thighs, like a knee finding a place. It crawled up me the way a person would when they don't want to make the mattress squeak. It wasn't heavy. It was enormous. The weight wasn't pounds. It was a kind of gravity. The deeper it pressed, the more the rest of the apartment fell away. I could hear blood in my ears, and underneath it, underneath all of it, a sound like a laugh being learned, broken and unfamiliar with a human throat. It pressed a hand to my shoulder. Cold sank through skin into bone. When the face filled my vision, black on black on black, something brushed my cheek the way hair would if someone leaned too close. The whisper came again. Same wordless shape. And this time, I felt the meaning in my ribs like a bruise blooming. Still here. I must have passed out. I woke with grey light finding the thin part of the curtains. I lay there for a full minute before I could make myself look down. 4 long, narrow lines ran from my collarbone to my sternum like scratches made by a child trying to carve their name without letters. They weren't deep. They were raw and ugly and real. My throat hurt from the scream I hadn't made. I packed that afternoon. I didn't pack well. I took what I could carry onto a bus. I left the rest because I felt watched even in daylight, and because every minute in that room felt like I owed something to the space that it might come to collect. I texted my landlord and made up a family emergency. I slept on a friend's futon for 3 nights, and then on another friend's couch for a week. I didn't tell them the truth because I wanted them to sleep. The first night away, I lay in the living room listening to the apartment's ordinary noises, grateful for everyone. I dozed, woke, dozed. Around 3 a.m., without a clock to confirm it, I snapped awake with my eyes open. No weight, no breath, no corner that didn't belong. But there was a feeling, a thin thread tugging under the skin at the back of my neck, the way you know someone is looking at you from the other end of a crowded room. I stared at the ceiling until the drywall turned gold. The feeling eased the longer I stayed away. I forced myself to say out loud one morning, "You can't follow me," because that's what a stranger on a message board said worked for them. My voice sounded small in my own mouth. I still dream about the apartment. In one, I stand in the doorway with my hand on the light switch, and the room is already lit, but the corners don't care. In another, I'm lying on the bed beneath a window that faces a dark that isn't the alley, and I can hear the wall breathing as if something on the other side is practicing being me. Once, months later, I had the kind of sleep paralysis where you know it's happening and you wait it out. I couldn't move. The room was unfamiliar. My friend's spare room, thrifted dresser, a poster of a band I never listened to, and for the first time I didn't look at the corner. I looked at the ceiling. I counted the tiny bumps in the paint. I named things I could see. The pressure on my chest lifted like a coat being taken off. When I could move, I sat up and laughed, wild and relieved, until I started crying. I'd like to end there, with the moment I won a small battle against something that shouldn't exist. But there are other nights. A month ago, I woke in my own new place to the feeling you get when you've left the stove on. My clock read 2:59, then blinked to 3:00. Nothing moved. The room was just a room. I shut my eyes and told myself every reasonable thing I know. After a while, I slept again. Some mornings, I find my keys on the counter a foot from where I always leave them, and once the closet door was open enough to count as open when I was sure I'd shut it. That could be me. All of this could be me. I know that. But every so often, I'll be at my desk, late, the room quiet in that way rooms get when they're listening, and my head will turn on its own toward a particular corner where shadow is supposed to be, and the shadow is just a shadow, and I'll wait one extra second to be sure before I look away. And somewhere under my ribs, the shape of a laugh I don't want to remember will try its best not to sound like a word. ChatGPT said, Story 2. The highway stalker. I've been a long-haul trucker for almost 20 years. You'd think by now, nothing out on the road could surprise me. I've driven through snowstorms that swallowed whole convoys, tornado weather that flipped rigs like soda cans, even stretches of desert so empty the silence felt heavier than traffic. But there's one night, one highway, that I can't explain away. People tell me truckers see things because we're sleep-deprived, but what I saw out there wasn't a hallucination. It was real, and it hasn't left me since. It was a late summer haul, a run across the desert southwest. I'd picked up in Phoenix and was headed east through New Mexico before looping north. The first leg was a long, straight strip of highway, no towns for miles, just sand, scrub, and sky. Out there, you drive under stars so clear it feels like you're under glass. The world shrinks to your headlights and grows to the edge of the universe at the same time. Most drivers find it peaceful. For me, that night, it was anything but. I'd been on the road for about 9 hours. My logbook said I still had time before I needed to shut down, but fatigue creeps in even if you're a pro. I had the CB radio on low, the hum of static mixed with the occasional voice of another trucker somewhere out there. The dash glowed soft green. The only other lights were the beams cutting ahead, catching faded stripes on the asphalt. My hands were steady on the wheel, my thermos still half full. No excuses. I was awake. Around midnight, something darted across the road. I braked lightly, scanning, expecting a coyote or a stray dog. Nothing. Just blacktop stretching out, empty as far as the beams could show. I told myself it was a trick of the eyes, maybe a tumbleweed catching a gust, even though the night was still. But my gut tightened in a way it never does for tumbleweeds. A few miles later, it happened again. A figure this time. Not clear, not detailed, more like a silhouette carved out of darker dark. It shot across the lane from left shoulder to right without reflecting in the headlights. Every normal thing throws a shadow. Signs, fence posts, even low brush. This thing didn't. It swallowed the light. I slowed more than I should have, scanning the mirrors. Nothing behind me but empty road. Nothing ahead but ribbon and sky. Still, my heart wouldn't settle. I've hit animals before, seen the damage. There was no impact, no thud, but I had the distinct, undeniable sense that something had been there. Then the radio hissed. Not the usual static, but a thick, cutting interference. A low sound underneath it, almost like breathing, almost like a word stretched too long. I reached to adjust the knob, and in that second I caught movement in the corner of my eye. The same figure. running along the shoulder, keeping pace with 80,000 pounds of steel and freight. I snapped my head toward it, but there was nothing there. When I looked forward again, my hands were white-knuckled on the wheel. I drove another 20 miles like that, nerves screaming until the desert gave me something like relief. A rest stop sign. Just a pull-off with a couple of picnic tables, no buildings. I thought about stopping, just to splash water on my face, reset my head. But as I flicked on the blinker, my stomach dropped. In the mirror, just for a split second, I saw it. Not beside the truck this time. Not on the road. In the passenger seat. The cab was dim, lit only by the dash. But there it was. A black figure sitting bolt upright where no one should be. Its head was turned toward me, as if it had been waiting for me to notice. I swear the temperature dropped 10 degrees in an instant. My throat closed, and I nearly lost the lane. By the time I flicked my eyes back, the seat was empty. But the impression of weight lingered, the way you can still feel when someone's been sitting beside you after they stand up. I didn't pull off. I sped up. The hum of the tires roared under me, trying to drown out the pounding in my ears. Every few minutes I checked the mirror, bracing to see it again. Sometimes I thought I caught the curve of a shoulder, the angle of a head, always gone by the time I blinked. Hours later, just before dawn, I finally saw other headlights in the distance. A convoy of trucks, maybe 3 or 4, moving together eastbound. Relief hit me so hard I laughed. I keyed the CB just to hear another voice. Static, then a gruff chuckle. Morning, driver. You sound spooked, I almost told him, almost said, you ever seen something out here that wasn't there? But I didn't. Truckers talk, stories spread, and I didn't want my name on some campfire tale. Instead, I asked how the road looked up ahead. He said, clear as ever. Just keep your eyes open. Sometimes you pick up company out here you don't want. He laughed again, but the words stuck like glass in my skin. By the time the sun rose, the figure was gone. The light washed the road in pale gold, scrubland stretching endless and harmless. But I never forgot that night. Other drivers talk. You hear things on the CB and truck stop diners over bad coffee. Some call it the highway shadow, a thing that runs the roads at night, shows itself to drivers who are alone too long. Some say if you see it once, you'll see it again. Others say if it ever rides with you, if it ever sits in the passenger seat, it means it's already chosen you. I tell myself I was tired. I tell myself my eyes played tricks. But every time I drive that stretch of desert, every time the radio hisses just wrong, I can feel the weight in the empty seat beside me, waiting for me to look over. And I don't. Not anymore. Story 3. The Childhood Visitor. I was 7 years old the first time I saw it. At that age, I didn't have words like apparition or entity. All I knew was that something was standing in the doorway of my room while I lay awake in the dark. Our hallway light was off. My parents were asleep, and the house was silent in that heavy way houses get at 3 in the morning. Yet there it was, a figure taller than my dad, thin as a coat rack, filling the doorway with a darkness darker than the shadows around it. I remember squeezing my blanket to my chin, eyes watering from refusing to blink. It didn't move, it didn't speak, it just watched. After what felt like hours, I shut my eyes tight and promised myself not to open them again. When I woke in daylight, the doorway was empty. I told myself I had dreamed it. That worked for one night. The following week, it returned. Always at the same time, always in the same place. My small nightlight should have softened the shadows, but with the figure there, the corner of the room seemed drained of light entirely. I told my mom the next morning. She smiled tiredly and said, "You were dreaming, sweetheart." Kids see things sometimes. I wanted to believe her. But kids know the difference between a dream and something that breathes in the same space as you. The encounters grew bolder. Some nights the figure leaned into the room, one shoulder brushing the doorframe. Other nights I'd wake to find it not at the doorway but standing at the foot of my bed. My sister, who shared the room until she moved to the basement, never saw it. She'd sleep peacefully while I lay frozen, heart hammering, as something without eyes stared holes into me. I started sleeping with the blanket pulled over my head. But even then, I could feel it. The air grew colder, my breath sharper in the fabric cocoon. Sometimes I heard my name whispered, low and deliberate, right by my ear, though the room was otherwise silent. My dog, Sadie, slept at the foot of my bed. She'd growl into the darkness, teeth bared at nothing until her throat rasped. More than once, she leapt off the bed to bark at the doorway, her body stiff, fur bristled, as if she were ready to fight an intruder. Yet when I flipped on the lamp, the hallway was empty. My parents stopped listening after a while. They told me I was having night terrors, that stress or sugar before bed was making me imagine things. But the scratches I found on my arm some mornings weren't dreams. They were faint, shallow lines, 3 or 4 at a time, as if someone had dragged cold fingers lightly across my skin while I slept. My mom said I must have scratched myself in the night. I tried to explain the angles made that impossible. She didn't want to hear it. As I grew older, the visits changed. Around age 12, the figure stopped standing still. It began to move. I'd wake to the sound of my desk chair creaking, and in the faint glow from the street lamp outside, I'd see it. Tall, impossible shadow, sitting in the chair, facing me. My school books were sometimes rearranged in the morning, pages bent, pencils on the floor. My sister accused me of messing with her things too, but I hadn't touched anything. I was too afraid to even walk past that corner after dark. By high school, I had convinced myself it was just part of childhood, something I would grow out of. And for a while, I thought I did. Life got busier. Homework, friends, late nights scrolling on my phone. For months at a time, I saw nothing. I let myself believe it had gone. Then, one night when I was 17, I woke at exactly 3:12 a.m. I remember the clock numbers vividly because they were the only light in the room. The rest of it was pitch black, suffocating. My eyes adjusted, and there it was again. Not in the doorway, not at the desk. Standing inches from my bed, leaning down. For the first time in years, I saw its head tilt. Slowly, unnaturally, like a puppet pulled on a broken string. And though it had no features, I felt its gaze locked on mine. I couldn't move, couldn't scream, couldn't do anything but lie there while the weight of its attention pressed me into the mattress. I prayed. I begged in my head for it to leave. After what felt like forever, the heaviness lifted, and I was able to squeeze my eyes shut until daylight returned. The following week, I begged my parents to let me move to the basement. I lied and said I wanted more privacy, that I needed space for school projects. The truth was, I couldn't stay another night in that room. My mom agreed, happy to see me maturing. I slept in the basement until graduation, and down there in that concrete coolness, the shadow never came. Or maybe it just waited. College felt like freedom. A new city, a dorm filled with laughter and noise. For the first 2 years, I didn't see it once. I let myself believe I'd left it behind in that childhood bedroom, like old posters and forgotten toys. I told no one about those nights. I pretended it hadn't happened. Then came senior year. I moved into a small off-campus apartment. My roommate worked late shifts, so I often had the place to myself. The first week was fine, but one night, around 3 a.m, I woke and realized I couldn't move. Sleep paralysis, I told myself. It's common. It's not real. But then I saw it, not at the door, not at the edge of my bed, leaning directly over me, its faceless head inches from mine, the same tilt, the same stillness. The years melted away in an instant. It was the same figure I had seen as a child, the same presence that had stalked me through every stage of my life. It hadn't been tied to the house. It had been tied to me. The paralysis broke with a gasp. I sat up, sweating, heart slamming against my ribs. My room was empty. My roommate was still gone. The silence stretched long, thick. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. Since then, I've seen it off and on. Not every night, not even every month, but enough to know it's still there. Sometimes it's in dreams, lurking at the edge of my vision. Sometimes it's in reflections, a darker shape behind me in a window when no one else is in the room. Sometimes, late at night, I'll wake and feel the same heavy gaze pressing down on me, and I know it's standing somewhere I can't see. I used to think childhood fears fade when you grow up. That's what everyone tells you, but this wasn't just fear, it was real. And the truth I live with now is worse than any nightmare. It never left. It never will.